All right, we will then call the meeting to order and start with the resolution entertaining a motion to approve resolution 2020-288, a resolution declaring that the Sustainability Commission shall meet on January 8th, 2021 and conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than being required to gather a quorum of the members physically present in the same location, because it's necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Do we have somebody who would like to bring the motion?
Approval. Yeah, move for approval.
Second.
All right, thank you. We'll do our round robin with voting here. Start with Patrick Berger. Or Patrick Berger. Patrick Baggett.
Hey, Patrick, you changed your name.
Hey, Mom. No.
Hey, son.
Aye.
Alderman Berger.
Aye.
Mike Leonard is absent. Brenton?
Aye.
Todd?
Aye.
Check back here, see if Nancy has joined yet. Not yet. All right. Micah?
Aye.
And then myself, Dana? Aye. Andrew, what about Mike Cassidy?
I have not heard from Mike.
Okay. All right, and then next is the announcement for limited public access that I'll read. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, this meeting will be a virtual meeting. The public may call in to listen to the meeting and make comments during any public comment period. The meeting video will be available for public viewing following the meeting on the City of Franklin Facebook and YouTube accounts and the City of Franklin website. All right, welcome to January Sustainability Commission meeting. Our first item on the agenda here is to review and approve the December meeting minutes. So I will, I guess, see if anyone wants to make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
All right. And we'll go through the round robin of voting again. Patrick.
Aye.
Alderman Berger.
Aye.
I think Mike Cassidy is absent, as well as Mike Leonard. So it brings us to Brenton.
Aye.
Todd.
Aye.
Nancy, absent. Micah.
Aye.
And then myself, Dana. Aye. All right. Next up, I guess, I don't think we need to do introductions. We don't have any visitors today. So I think we can go to electing chair and vice chair, which Andrew, you're going to lead us through that?
Yeah, I can do that. Every year at the beginning of the year, we take nominations for chair and vice chair. So I guess we can open it up.
Well, I nominate Dana if she's still interested, unless someone else wants to do the chair. I think she does a great job. So, but I don't mean that anyone else couldn't or is not capable, but I'll throw it out there for her.
I'll second it.
I'll second that too.
That's fine with me. I don't want to, I don't want to keep taking the role if somebody else wants to step in. So happy to retire and stay on the commission if anyone wants to step in. And
we're all a team, Dana. So we're all a team. We can't do it without everybody. So you do a great job, Dana. You do a really good job.
Yeah, one more time. Good.
All right.
All right. Go.
All right. Thank you.
we have to vote?
Well, I think we need to probably do the roll call to make it official, and I'll let you go ahead and run through that.
Okay. Let's start with Patrick again.
Aye.
Alderman Berger.
Aye.
Mike Cassidy and Mike Leonard are absent. Brenton.
Aye, and congratulations.
Thank you. Todd.
Aye.
Nancy, I don't think is on it yet. Micah.
Aye.
And myself, Dana. Aye. Right, that brings us to Vice Chair. I guess I'd like to nominate Todd to continue in that role. I think you're interested, Todd. I don't know if anyone else is interested, but I think you've been doing a good job, and maybe next year you'll want to be chair.
Maybe so. I'll leave it open for anybody. Like I said, I feel like we're all a team. I'm happy to do that. I just want to help and serve, and I just consider myself part of this team, but I'll gladly accept if everyone chooses so.
I'll second that.
That nomination.
Oh, yep. Go ahead. Take his.
All right. Patrick.
Aye.
Alderman Berger.
Aye.
Mike Cassidy and Mike Leonard are absent. Brenton.
Aye.
Todd.
Aye.
Nancy is not with us. Micah.
Aye.
And then myself, Dana. Aye. All right. That gets us through another year of chair and vice chair. Thanks, Todd.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
And just so everybody knows, Dana and Todd have been wonderful to work with, and you guys are always very responsive, and I enjoy working with you guys. So looking forward to another year.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Andrew. Me as well. It's a good team, as
Hey,
Todd said.
Andrew, I've got a question for you before we go on. I was trying to get on. I'm on my phone. That's fine, I guess. I was just trying to get on my computer, but there's no link in my computer. Did you send us an actual link on the computer on an email? I'm talking about.
I think it was in the invite, the Outlook invite.
Yeah, for some reason I can't get that on my computer. That's okay. I'll just deal with them.
You want me to resend you the link here?
Yeah, just if you email it to me, it's great, because I just like to get it on the larger computer if I can. Okay. Thanks.
Let's see if I can do that.
All right. Our next agenda item is to do a recap of the City Hall redevelopment. Andrew, in the meeting notes, or in the email with the meeting information, attached meeting notes from the lead charrette. So there's further information about the energy goal, but we also want to talk about some of the other items on the agenda here: advanced metering, solar and battery storage, innovation credits, et cetera. So I think, Andrew, were you going to lead us through this portion?
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground at the last meeting, and we had to go kind of quickly, especially at the end. So I wanted to kind of create some space for everybody to weigh in if you didn't feel like you were able to do that at the last meeting. There are also a couple topics that I don't know that we discussed enough, which is kind of why I highlighted them on the agenda. The first one was just kind of talking about the overall kind of energy or sustainability related kind of goal. The design team is targeting LEED Silver because that is what the city passed a resolution about 10 years ago identifying LEED Silver as sort of that benchmark, that goal to shoot for with municipal projects. So LEED Silver is kind of what we're shooting for. We could achieve gold. I think that's within the realm, depending on some of those checklist items. But, I just wanted to toss it out to the group to talk about that as well as the overall kind of energy piece of it.
I guess I'll start with the overall LEED goal. I feel like it's, I mean, obviously silver is the requirement, but in terms of going to the next level and trying to reach for gold, I think it most makes sense if we're not point chasing. If we're, just implementing points that that the city's not gonna find good value, then we shouldn't try to go for LEED gold. And then in the context of energy, I feel like there should be some kind of energy savings goal as a percentage beyond the LEED baseline. And I looked at the simple box model. I didn't quite see I saw a lot of good analysis, but I didn't see an outcome of, this, our goal should be X percentage beyond the ASHRAE 90.1 baseline for LEED. I'm just scrolling to the page of the white box model. Like I said, there was a lot of really good analysis. So there's a few pages here. So the summary was that there's lighting power density be as low as feasible. And then there were minimum and maximum suggestions for roof insulation and U value of glazing. I didn't see anything that said we should aim to be X percent better than the baseline. So I think if the team could do that, then that'll help. If the design team could do that, that'll help inform the design decisions that get made.
So would that be like 10%, 20%, 30%? And just kind of evaluate it.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And the energy code for the city is better than the energy code or the baseline for LEED. So the energy code for the city is 2018 IECC, which is equivalent to ASHRAE 90.1 2016. And the LEED baseline is ASHRAE 90.1 2010. So just by meeting the city's energy code, we should see a fair amount of savings for LEED energy performance of the building. So that'll help
Dana,
quite a bit.
Dana, do you want to translate that into civilian speak?
So yeah, I know. As I started throwing those out, I was saying them slowly too. So
I want to know what.
But as I was saying it, I was like, yeah. So ASHRAE, well, IECC is the International Energy Conservation Code, and that's the city is on the 2018 version of that code. But I then translate to make things apples to apples, because LEED looks at it from the ASHRAE 90.1 standard, and ASHRAE is the association for refrigerating, for heating, refrigeration, and air conditioning. But it's another way, it's a standard, not a code. It's another way to measure the energy performance of a building, so to speak. So because LEED is on ASHRAE, I wanted to get the city's code into the same apples to apples comparison. So LEED is on 2010, the city is on 2016, which is a more stringent starting point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got it. Thanks.
Well, I think you make a good point about, doing things that are going to, further our energy reduction goals, further kind of the city's goals and desires, and not point chase. So I think you made a good point about, not just blindly trying to, hit a certain LEED level, but doing things that are going to add value to the project and that we all support. Okay. I guess I'll just run through the little bullet points I have on the agenda. And then if there are any other pieces to this that someone wants to bring up, we can do that. The advanced metering, we did, excuse me, talk about that with Ken Scalf last meeting. Early on, we had identified advanced metering as maybe something we didn't want to do because we didn't think that it was necessary as part of the City Hall project, with it being, primarily a institutional office building. We didn't think that, there'd be a lot of value in having the sub-metering throughout the building, but the commission thought, wait a minute, we need to look at this. So we're moving that to the, the maybe column, and we'll kind of explore that. Dana, do you have any additional thoughts on that?
I mean, my main additional thought, and I think I said this in the last meeting, but I'll say it again, I always think of the value, because there is going to be an extra cost for that advanced metering. So, and if somebody's going to look at the data to analyze the data to help bring the energy usage and therefore the energy cost down, then I think there's value to it. And of course, it depends on how much the advanced metering is going to cost too. But if there's nobody that's going to look at that data, then it's not worth doing it. But what it does is, just so everyone knows, it will, without it, the city will get one bill for electricity and another bill for gas. Or maybe if it's an all-electric building, they just get an electric bill. The advanced metering allows the city to look at, well, here's how much energy we're spending on lighting, on heating, on cooling, on plug loads, people plugging their cell phones in, their computers, et cetera. And then from there, once you have that data, then you can start to target, well, why are our lights on in the middle of the night? They shouldn't be. Let's figure out why and make sure they turn off, just as an example of something they could find. Or why is the cooling equipment running at night? And so that helps save energy and save costs to the city. But again, if there's nobody that's going to look at that data, then there's not a lot of value in installing that system. Well, and of course, one more thought I just had is think further down the line of maybe there's not somebody right now who's going to look at the data, but in 3 years and 5 years and 10 years, is there somebody that might look at it?
Yeah, I think two things that come to my mind are the occupancies of the new city hall and what occupancies we're going to have. We're going to have more fire, building services, what type of occupancies are going to be there? Is there going to be public, private? I mean, is there going to be some retail? Might there, on a ground floor? I know I've heard a lot of different things thrown out, and some of, all that goes into, when I think about this, how, if that would be useful. I don't necessarily, I think the building code that you just mentioned, from my experience and clients' experience with that building code, we're knocking out a lot of this, a lot of the lighting issue, the efficiencies and usage from a lighting standpoint. I think it's pretty much required that you have a lot of those smart lighting technologies installed on the front end. So I just wonder, the occupancy really is the first question. And when you think about sub-metering, does that code because we have such a newer version, or we have adopted them, I think probably the latest, or one of the most widely adopted latest versions of that code. Are we already achieving some of those things we would want to be monitoring because we've got the new code? But you're right, down the line it could change. So the occupancy, and then does the code really address some of the things that this office type use building, the data we'd really want to know we're controlling? I don't know who that's directed to, but to the broader.
I'll take a stab at the occupancy. As far as I know, it's going to be the building will primarily serve as a city hall. So it's going to be, offices for city staff. I think the door is open. I think there's some room and potentially some opportunities to have some flex space. But as far as I know, Kelly, I don't think we've identified any other tenants or specific uses.
That's right, Andrew. We haven't, but we are going to look at that in the next months. Right now, we're undergoing departmental interviews with the consultants to determine what their needs are, finalize what the space needs are. So we'll have a much better picture a little bit further down the line than where we are right now. But it is something we want to look at, what other potential uses could help activate the street down 3rd Avenue, for example, to really make the block really cohesive.
So I would just say if there's like a restaurant, I don't know, I'm not saying this is what, but let's just say there was a brewery or a restaurant in the corner, just because we've got some extra space. Okay. Those are going to pull a bunch of energy. We may want to sub-meter some of these things to see, what these tenants are doing, if there's some, just that was my thought process.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
That is a great point. And if we would end up doing some kind of white box space, kind of like you're mentioning with other uses, we'd probably have that separately metered.
Well, am I on?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. This little thing is not showing me my, oh yeah, there it is. Okay, if we had other entities in there, see, I think it's short-sighted for us not to plan for that. First of all, do we know how many stories this building is going to be? Is there any 2 or 3?
We're looking at 3 stories.
That's what I thought.
Plus potential parking.
Yeah, maybe using the rooftop as well. Okay. So if we have 3 stories, I think, well, let me look at my notes here. It's, I got a couple questions. So I think it's short-sighted for us not to incorporate some uses within City Hall, like maybe an eatery, maybe places, maybe a box, a space where there could be some services. So people in City Hall don't have to like run out to get these services, and we can have integrated services come in there. Like if you had a dry cleaner, you might have a space for drop off and pickup That's all it would be. And that space could incorporate maybe something like that. We had talked about clinics, a wellness clinic. There should be some of this, and Kelly, as you're talking to them and everything, we need to be talking about planning those. And I'm sure that you probably all have talked about that.
Yes, we have. Yes.
Okay. So I think those spaces are critical. And my question is, I got a couple questions. One of my questions is, does that advanced metering, Dana and everybody else that works in the industry, and Kelly, do you see that advanced metering also helping us to figure out what's going on energy-wise with those other spaces as well? I mean, it's just not City Hall and our services. Wouldn't it be the entire building?
I can probably speak. Brenton probably sees this too. With our commercial large size loads, the office buildings and things, most people don't do a lot of that sub metering unless they have a scenario like what you're talking about, because basically in a building, unless you're a manufacturer, you've just got lights and HVAC. But if you get into what Patrick was saying, where you've got, let's say, a restaurant and you've got machinery and stoves and refrigerators, that's when you want to start figuring out really more granularly what's that using and at what time, and how can we offset that? Because with lights and HVAC, as you were also saying, you can just do controls that will fix that and keep that reduced, and you're reducing your load on that. They just put some sort of a governor or something on that to regulate the lighting and HVAC. So,
and that's something we might want to do. If you look at Nissan's always a great example. Take a look at, if you walk into a room, the lights are going to come off. If somebody's gone and there's no one in there, there's no activity, the lights will sense that after so many minutes and go off.
Right.
So even if you're sitting at your desk working, lights are going to stay on. But if there's no activity in that room, those lights will go off. I think we ought to look at those kinds of things for cost savings. So up front, we know that some of these things will cost more up front, but long term, I think some of the part of the discussion needs to be long term. What is the cost savings long term? And is it worth it? Because when we look down 10, 15, 20, 25 years, what does that look like for cost savings? So the other thing, going back to advanced metering, we're talking about who's going to look at that data. Well, first of all, my question is, as a layperson here, who is and who would look at that data? Do we have to assign somebody to look at that data? And how does that look?
Well, I can tell you right now that finance, and it was Angelique, and now it's a man named Caleb. They look at all of the Middle Tennessee electric utility bills that come in, and then they document them in a spreadsheet. So we have kind of month by month usage and costs for every meter in the city. And they started doing that in probably 2014 or so. And it's been very helpful for me. So, I look at it periodically. They're keeping tabs on it. I don't know. I think facilities, I think Brad probably glances at bills occasionally. One of the questions that's been brought up, and I don't know, Kelly, maybe you can shed some light on it, is if our maintenance department is going to kind of continue to maintain this facility, or if the city has considered hiring somebody to professionally manage the facility, which is, more common with larger buildings. So I don't know if that's come up at all in conversations.
That hasn't come up to date. We're still at the preliminary stages of fact finding and interviews with different departments. We'll eventually probably have a conversation like that, but at this time we haven't.
Okay. And, the example I'm thinking of is like JLL, Jones Lang LaSalle, they have a contract with the state of Tennessee to kind of manage a lot of their bigger facilities. And that, they would definitely look at the advanced metering information very frequently. So, that's kind of where I was coming from.
What kind of cost? I mean, I have no idea what advanced metering might cost, in addition to what regular metering might cost. Remedial metering might cost. What does advanced metering cost? Does anyone have it? Do you have an idea? Is it negligible, Todd? You're shaking your head.
Well, I say that because I think back to Andrew's point, when you have a third party like JLL who's monitoring that, they're going to sell you a package, and that's do you just get the meters and you do it yourself, or do they monitor it for you? But as far as the cost, I mean, I can look into that. I can probably come up with something like that. I know Brenton, he's involved in these things too. But I don't know off the top of my head. I've talked to my metering engineering and stuff like that. So.
Todd, I think that would be good information to have.
Yep.
I really think you got to look into it. I think you got to bring that back and also, share this commission and Kelly and the planning and the people working together on City Hall. I think,
and I will.
It's easier to have more information.
Sorry,
more information.
I was going to say, my experience on projects, it is not an insignificant, I don't want to say it's significant because it's still doable, but it's not a small cost to do advanced metering. Right. And then basic metering is, that's going to be required just to have the building have electricity and gas. So, yeah.
It sounds like Andrew, and rightfully so, there's some value there, especially in his role. And if you see, you can say, let's say it's, you can find $10,000 in savings by having that, and it costs 20, it kind of makes sense. If it's 10,000 a year and it costs 20, then of course that's a no-brainer. But so I guess those are the numbers that really, I think you'd have to make that assessment.
Yeah, Patrick, you're right, because again, we want to look at upfront costs versus long-term savings, and how that is what's the ripple effect on that long-term, year after year after year. And sometimes you have to get to a point to say, if I put all this money in it up front, when do we start reaping the benefits of that cost of those of the expenditures to get there? So all those need to be a part of that conversation.
Hey, this is Brent. I just wanted to kind of jump in here. I think I think everything we're saying is great, but I also think I've seen two approaches to this. I've seen folks with new buildings just do the building management system, kind of like you alluded to, Bev, over at Nissan with the lights and things, which is definitely some energy savings, and you don't even have to look at metering, right? But I can't stress enough what Dana said early on. If we go the metering route, how important it is to have someone who is going to routinely review that and take action on it. Because I can't tell you how many large facilities I've seen that spent thousands and thousands of dollars on sub-metering, and they just have so much sub-metering in some of these large commercial facilities that they don't even look at all of it. They're metering too much, right? They're getting so much data they can't even review it all, and they spent this money on it, but they're not using it. So that might be a decision too. So, maybe just go building management route, or if you go both, make sure to include the part of how are we going to action it? Do we have a person that's going to review it weekly, monthly, or maybe JLL comes in, like Andrew said? That's a huge piece, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen that, where the data's there and nothing's being done with it.
And one other thing to add there, the advanced metering system it's likely not going to be part of an energy bill. So I don't think the finance group would see it. I think it's either got to be somebody from facilities / maintenance or an outsourced firm, like you said, Andrew.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no reason. We can talk all day long about it here, and they can talk about it, putting this whole package together and researching City Hall and everything. But it does you're absolutely right. It does no good to really have an advanced metering system if it's just going to sit there and we don't have somebody to analyze it. The other thing is, I would think that there would be major software programs with advanced metering that calculates all this out, spits out the data for you. And then somebody has to take that data and make sense out of it and say, we've got a planning department over here, and their kitchen area within their department is really using up the energy. So what's going on here? Or their water bill, their water usage in that little kitchen area is pretty high. So we go in and investigate, we find out there's some problem there. When we fix it and we reduce that, or, you know, something's being left on every single night when everybody goes home. So if those are the kinds of things we're looking for, then we do, number one, we have to have somebody who analyzes this data on a regular basis. Within, I would think it would be great to have that if we're large enough to do that internally. And if not, what is the cost, again, to outsource that to Johnson or whoever who would do that, whoever would do the analyzing the metering and stuff. So lots of questions.
Okay. Well, that's all good. Let's move on to the next one, which I put down as rooftop solar and battery storage. And, you know, initially when I was going through the LEED checklist, I didn't think that City Hall would be a good candidate for solar. But then I kind of reevaluated that and reconsidered it and, you know, looked at the City Hall utility bill. And, you know, the city pays roughly $100,000 a year for our power bill. And there is a demand charge that's part of that. That typically runs, you know, maybe $1,000 a month. So if solar could be used to chip away at that demand charge and, you know, right size a solar PV system and maybe do some battery storage to try and knock that demand charge off, then, you know, solar probably would make sense. But, you know, wanted to get y'all's feedback, and then if you all think it's a good idea, we can explore it further, and we can try and come up with an estimate on, you know, what size system that would be and what all it would cost.
I'll speak something on that briefly. I know in working with other commercial sized businesses that have done solar, the big thing you've got to watch when you, and again, I keep invoking Brenton here, but he sees this too. If you start to chip away at that demand as part of your contract with TVA, you have to use 30% of that transformer size. So if you go below that, then you're still going to have to pay for so much of that anyway. So yes, there's an area there. And I just caution us to be careful, but I think it's worth vetting. I'd be curious, Brenton, what do you think? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's worth exploring, like you said, Andrew. But quite honestly, on buildings of this size and this use case, the ROI is it's pretty far out there. Right. Which may be fine. Right. I mean, it's a City Hall building. It's not like we're going to use it for 5 years and get rid of it. I mean, but I think solar and energy storage are great. Right. I mean, I think if we have the ability to do it, I think we should absolutely do it. But we definitely need to look at the numbers. It's just tough because the size of the roof and what you can get up there. I don't know if it's going to shave off enough. So that's kind of where the numbers come in key, I think.
Brenton, have you ever had the scenario I was explaining where it gets into a little bit of that contract issue? You start to remove enough demand that you're paying for that demand anyway. You know what I'm talking about?
I haven't had anybody yet that generated enough to do that, but that's definitely a good point.
Can I ask a question here?
Oh, you're muted.
Oh.
Okay. Now can you hear me?
Yes.
little icon is sort of missing, and I'm hitting in the dark here, trying to figure out why my icon's not there. Sorry about that. So I'm trying to understand, interesting discussion. So I've got a question. I don't know enough about solar. So when you talk about the solar build up, the solar, you know, the energy storage you talked about with solar. So when you talk about energy storage, does solar build up that energy so that you then can use it and cut down on your electricity, and then it's stored? So it's like a hybrid car. So I just got one of those, and so lo and behold, I did not really know how that worked. So when I'm driving around, it's using my gas, but I'm sitting at the light and I put on my brake, it shuts down and it's going off battery. So is that similar to how that storage, that energy storage works?
I think Dana might be the best person to talk about battery storage.
I need a little educating here.
It is, you're right. I'd say the only difference between your analogy with the car and the solar storage system is that instead of using gas, the building would be using
electricity,
the solar system. Well, and electricity. It'd be using electricity, gas, and the solar system, and then pulling from the storage when the sun goes down. It'd pull from that battery.
Oh, yeah. Okay, got it. So, all right. So then it builds that up. Let me ask you something else. What if we had a huge outage? Well, we did here not too long ago. At least I did over here. What about this new city hall? Are we going to have built-in generators for our city hall to operate? Has any discussion, Kelly, or any of you all, Andrew, has there been any discussion about that? Are we to that point? I would think that we would have to have some kind of backup system, and then I don't know how all that plays into the backup system either.
We're not quite at that point yet. I imagine we will do that also.
I would think that'd be very important. We have city services we have to operate in. You know, I think the emergency services over there have their own as well.
That's a really good point, Alderman Berger, because if the city has to pay for the cost of generators, the battery storage system, yes, as long as it's charged up before the event occurs, then you can pull from it when the power is out. So, I mean, there are times so I have a solar and battery system at my house, and there are times where the power's out and I don't even know it because it's pulling from my battery. So that event that you had recently, I don't know, the last one I can think of was probably a year ago. So
yeah, we had it the day after all our cell phones and internets went down with AT&T, and then our electricity went down. We go, oh, wow, what's happening here? So I think that in Andrew and Kelly, in that conversation with City Hall, I think you need to make that note and star it on the side, because I think we have to make sure that we have some type of generator, like the hospital. If the hospital goes down, the generators come on immediately. They don't miss a beat because they have people on ventilators. They have people just coming in. There are people in surgeries. They can't afford to have the electricity down. So in a sense for City Hall, first of all, we're not, operating on people and keeping them on ventilators or something, but we do run the city, and we have city services, and we have maybe not the emergency call-in at City Hall, but we have critical services. So I would think that we would make sure that that's part of the major part of the conversation as generators, and how do we deal with outages, because we know we will have them. Thanks.
On the, that's a good point. On the solar, I guess my thoughts are hearing the resident experts here. And we had a discussion on solar out by the treatment plant as well, and some of the opportunities maybe out there. I guess highest and best use of the real estate of the top of the roof of City Hall, and is it worth investing in solar there, or is it better investing in solar out where we already have solar? I think about maintenance on the top of City Hall, and if there is, I don't know if that's a challenge to get up, all the things that go into maintaining up there, and then thinking about just kind of the real estate that's up there. Not that we would put anything on top of it, but just thinking outside the box, if that could be, just the trend downtown seems to be rooftop, stuff. Some of it's vacant, but you would expect that at some point there would be, occupancy. So I just thinking if it's worth investing in solar, if the math doesn't work out, like I've kind of heard, it may not, worth looking into, but does it make more sense to use the real estate out in the solar field now to expand like we had discussed, or that we said might be an option? Just a thought. But I think either way, you got to look into it. You got to check the boxes and make sure that it may make sense, because of the battery offset to generators, that you all are just talking about. So anyway, just those are my thoughts. The highest and best use of that rooftop, given the various real estate and dynamics downtown.
Patrick, you bring up a really good point that's been brought up in different employee groups and with the consultant already, that we want to be able to have a lot of outdoor spaces for employees, terraces, break areas, maybe even outdoor meeting spaces on a terrace outside on the rooftop or off the second floor. So there's a great opportunity to make it more of an indoor-outdoor facility because we have good weather for so much of the year. So that will definitely be a balancing act to make sure that we maximize the functionality of the building and the outdoor opportunities, and look at solar to see how that might impact those abilities to be able to use that outdoor space.
Yeah, I think we'd have to figure out how much solar is needed. We'd have to right size the amount of solar, to do what we wanted to do. And that would be to, bring down that demand charge. And then see how big of a rooftop space we have, and see, maybe everything can be accommodated. Just not sure on that yet.
Andrew, one more thing on that with solar, that maybe, I know we're talking City Hall, but what about as a city overall, as we talk solar and sustainability, right? Do we have a goal to be 100%, greenhouse gas free or whatever by year 20, whatever, right? And if we do, maybe that includes all new buildings that we build have X percentage of solar on them, even if it doesn't shave off the demand. But over time, as you build new buildings, you have this huge, large solar array across the city that does impact the city as a whole.
That's a good point. I think that's a larger discussion to have. We've typically avoided those kind of blanket goals, for the reason of wanting to make sure we're doing things that, add value to what we're trying to do, versus, it goes back to kind of the point chasing point that was made earlier. We're trying to do things that are going to provide a direct benefit with a specific purpose. But, I think that's a good point and probably a larger discussion. Oh, you're muted again.
It's just a box. It's a dark box with no name, with no mic on it anymore. Sorry. Okay. So the rooftop, just real quick. I was someplace years ago, well, not terribly long ago, but enough, years that they had a rooftop. It was a business building, and they had a rooftop. And Kelly and Andrew, pay attention to this because when you all are talking about this, so the rooftop is so large, and they had some solar panels at one side of it off, but in the whole roof area, they had a pathway around the roof, the outside, inside, but on the top of the roof, all the way in the perimeter of the roof for people to walk. And so they put their tennis shoes on and walk the roof. Okay. And then internally, there's some trellises with some greenery on it, some tables, and then you can wind up the umbrella if there was sun and sit there and eat your lunch. So they utilize that rooftop for getting their people outside, being able to, hey, I can go to lunch here. I can, go upstairs and they can also walk the roof. So they utilize that roof area. I think that we need to really, really utilize it as best we can. But anyway, I just wanted to add that. I remembered that.
I think you're right. The police headquarters has a green roof, a very large one that covers, most of the rooftop space, but there's no public access, or no access for employees to get up there. So the only people that make it up there are the ones maintaining. So you're right. It is kind of a missed opportunity.
Yeah. And we need to make it usable. I don't like wasting space, and to throw, solar panels all over a roof or a green roof and put greenery all over a roof where you can't even walk on it or use it. I think it ought to be usable. And we have enough workers in City Hall. They need space. They don't need to always be going out down the street. They might want to have their sack lunch. They might do something in the kitchen. They want a place to eat. They don't want to just eat at their desk. They don't want to eat in the conference room. So, or the little kitchen area you've got. Get them outside. We want to utilize those spaces. At least I do. I think that's smart.
Has anyone seen examples here? Go ahead.
To that point, solar panels can be a good shading opportunity for those times in the summer when employees want to get out there and enjoy their lunch and it's too hot. But Kelly, were you asking if there are examples around town?
I was going to ask if anyone had any examples. We had the same kind of thought, I think, on top of a parking structure, to utilize solar on top of a parking structure.
Well, I know out west, that's regular in Arizona. Specifically in Arizona, where I've go frequently, is in the parking lots. Yes, they have solar panels that are the parking or the shade structures in the parking lot.
Yeah,
now,
parking lots is common, and yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. On the top of a building to shade with solar panels, I don't know. I don't know the implications of that on the structure of the building. So yeah, that's something the design team would need to look at and see if that, does that mean they have to beef up the structure? Because of basically the wind load is the biggest concern. But that's probably not much different than having a trellis up there either.
Well, Dana or Brenton or Todd, I may circle back with you guys in the next few weeks to kind of move this conversation offline and see if we can kind of get in the details of it.
Sounds good.
Yep. All right. Innovation credits.
I've got one more question real quick.
Okay.
So my question is, talking about this rooftop type stuff, what roof type is most compatible with solar panels? Is it a seamed roof? Is it a metal roof? What kind of roof is more, I think that roof material would play into that, and some might not be ideal for solar. And I think, I don't know about that discussion, but I would be curious what kind of materials they would, and I'm probably jumping ahead, but, you know, that's just, maybe you can asterisk that as well. I mean, the question would be what types of roofing are compatible with solar panels and the uses that we might also want to put up there.
Be a good question for a solar installation contractor. I bet they could help us with that.
They'd probably say any roof with good southern exposure.
South side facing.
Yeah,
That's right.
And you're also saying that solar panels, I think I hear you're saying solar panels offer energy to offset the cost of cooling in the summer, of course, but does it keep our rooftop cooler as well? I mean, it's absorbing thermal energy from the sun, and then, you know, I know they have really good absorption properties in solar panels, but you know, I think there's a lot to discuss there.
Okay, great. Well, we're about out of time. Are there any other comments or questions people have?
I actually meant to jump in a long time ago. There's a 314 area code on the phone. I think that might be Mike Cassidy.
Yes.
Yes, I was about 15 minutes late joining the call. I apologize. I got hung up in another call I couldn't get out of. But I've been
no worries.
These points, I've been listening to a lot of the points about the roof and the solar panels. I think all of these points that have been raised are valid. And if I can assist in any way, be happy to help out, Andrew.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Well, with our last minute here, I think the only announcement we have is our next Sustainability Commission meeting is on Friday, February 5th. Were there any other announcements anyone wanted to make?
I do have one more. I touched base with Mike Leonard, and his 3-year term expires the end of next month. And he indicated he would like to step aside and let somebody else serve on the commission. So we'll put out a call for applicants in the next couple of weeks. So be thinking if there's anybody that you know of that might be interested.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up. When the call gets posted, will you let us know?
Yes.
Okay.
At the bottom of the agenda, I put everybody's term limits. Mike's, I had a typo. I put his expires next year, but we realized it was this year. So I've checked everyone else's. I think they're correct, but you might just give it a look.
Okay.
Yep, and let's see, my election is next October, so you may or may not have somebody new here from an alderman perspective as well. It depends. And if I'm back, and then that's up to the mayor to reappoint me or appoint somebody else too, so that could be a change there with me. You said Mike's term expires when, Andrew? Next year? Or no,
next month.
Next month. Yeah, I saw those listed. That was very helpful. Yeah, this was a very interesting discussion today, guys. I learned a lot. I think it's really helpful. It makes me want to think about some uses for that roof and how that should be. And it really got me thinking more about I'm going to do some more reading on metering, advanced metering. I just got my curiosity up on a lot of that. So thanks for the discussion and everybody's expertise. I so appreciate all of your knowledge and sharing it with me because, I think at some point we're all going to have a discussion with Board of Mayor and Aldermen And so it helps me figure out some things too that I think I'll point out that when you do talk to them at different points about City Hall, some of the things to bring up so we can educate them. Because I sit here and think of questions all the time because I'm a curious person anyway. I want to know things. I want to know what makes something tick. But, to make decisions, we've got a lot of decisions to make on that board. And when it comes to City Hall, everybody here and all the staff people from City Hall and the board, we got a big job ahead to make sure that we get this right. This is a huge project, and we want to make sure we get these things right, and we want to do what's best long term for our City Hall because it's a structure that's going to remain for a long, long time, and we'll make good use of it. So I just appreciate everybody and everybody's expertise. It's really been helpful.
Yes, agreed. I'm glad we took the time in this meeting to add more discussion. I felt just like Andrew did that we had cut it short last time. So, all right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for the discussion, for joining. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you in February.
Congratulations, Dana and Todd again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
See y'all. Bye.